Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to explore a truly radical and honestly kind of unsettling idea about the very nature of your own mind. We usually tend to think of our brains as these super reliable recording devices, right? Like they're just perfectly capturing reality and feeding us the objective truth. But what if I told you that your mind is actually actively deceiving you? And even crazier, what if that deception isn't a glitch or a flaw, but a brilliant evolutionary feature designed entirely to keep you alive? Today, we are uncovering the architecture of self-deception.
Okay, let's dive into this. Take a quick second and think about a deeply held memory. Or, think about a time you were absolutely certain you were right in an argument and the other person was just entirely at fault. Have you ever stopped to consider that your perception of those events might be a complete fabrication? I mean, why would the very organ responsible for keeping you alive actively feed you falsehoods? Well, to understand this, we have to stop looking at the brain as a simple camera and start looking at it as a highly advanced piece of defensive technology.
So your brain actually possesses what we can call a security firewall. Now, obviously, we usually use that term for computers, but your mind has its own built-in cognitive defense system. Its main directive? To protect you. Specifically, it's guarding you from psychological trauma and complete ego destruction. When reality gets too painful, or when recognizing your own flaws would just be too devastating to handle, this firewall kicks in. It actively rewrites your memories. It takes your own faults and projects them onto the people around you. It really fundamentally challenges that basic trust we have in our own minds as objective truth tellers, simply because this system prioritizes your survival over total accuracy.
Here's how we're going to break this down today. First, your brain's security firewall. Second, the science of illusion. Third, hacking cognitive dissonance. Then, interrogation and internal logic. And finally, algorithms of your personality.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, your brain's security firewall and how it mounts its defense.
We're looking at the foundational architecture of self-deception here. Before we can understand how this system gets manipulated, we really have to understand what it's doing on a day-to-day basis. And this architecture is operating in real time, right now in your head. It is actively rewriting memories and projecting faults onto others. Have you ever completely forgotten a totally humiliating detail of a past event? Or maybe remembered yourself being far more heroic than you actually were? Yeah, that is the firewall at work. If you have an internal flaw that causes you deep insecurity, the firewall actually deflects that pain by making you hyper-aware of that exact same flaw in somebody else. You project it outward, the threat is neutralized, your ego is protected, and you survive another day. But to pull this whole thing off, the brain needs to construct a really convincing illusion.
Moving right along to Section 2, the science of illusion, or basically how the brain tricks us.
Let's move to and see how this builds. How does your biological hardware actually pull off this magic trick of the mind? To understand the underlying science, let's just compare two processes here. On the left, we've got visual edge detection. This is a real physiological process, where your eyes literally create or enhance the physical contrast at the borders of objects so you can see shapes clearly and, not walk into walls. It's a literal biological manipulation of light and dark. Now look over at the right, top-down knowledge. Just as your eyes manufacture physical contrast, your brain manufactures psychological logic. It creates a top-down narrative to justify your behavior. You do something totally irrational, and almost instantly, your brain generates a perfectly logical reason for why you did it, effortlessly bridging the gap between your actions and your self-image.
Which brings us to Section 3, hacking cognitive dissonance. This is where we look at the ultimate psychological glitch.
So, what happens when the reality of your actions directly clashes with your pristine self-image? Well, you get a system error. We call it cognitive dissonance. It's that extreme, squirmy discomfort you feel when you're holding two completely conflicting beliefs at the exact same time. The brain desperately tries to patch this glitch using a few specific psychological defense mechanisms. It'll act as an eraser, rewriting the traumatic memory. It'll act as a mirror, projecting those internal faults outward. And it'll grind its gears to manufacture new internal logic, all just to eliminate that uncomfortable friction. Your mind systematically deploys these defenses to restore order. It will literally alter the past and invent new logic just to resolve that uncomfortable internal conflict. Now for Section 4, Interrogation and Internal Logic, where we explore real-world interrogation tactics.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that once you map out a security system, someone else can learn exactly how to hack it. external forces can and absolutely do exploit this internal psychological firewall. And that brings us to the Reid technique, which is a very famous method used by interrogators. Notice how these steps perfectly mirror the brain's own built-in defense mechanisms. Step 1. Exploit cognitive dissonance. The interrogator traps the suspect in a contradiction, artificially triggering that psychological glitch. Step 2. Offer psychological justification. The interrogator acts just like the brain's top-down knowledge system, offering an excuse or some twisted logic that makes the bad behavior seem understandable. Step 3. Force a logical narrative. They provide the script that patches the glitch. These interrogators aren't just asking questions, guys. They are literally hacking the exact same logic manufacturing process our brains use naturally to defend our egos. They're using the architecture of self-deception against us.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5, Algorithms of Your Personality, focusing on evolutionary survival.
I want us to just really slow down for a second and absorb the implications of everything we've just uncovered about our mental architecture. Your personality is a series of evolutionary survival algorithms. So the crucial point is this: if your memories are routinely rewritten to protect you, if your faults are constantly projected onto others to save your ego, and if your internal logic is manufactured after the fact just to resolve cognitive dissonance, what exactly does that make your personality? We all love to think of our personality as our fixed, immutable soul. But this reframes everything. Your quirks, your defensiveness, your justifications, they are biological programming. They are complex mathematical equations that your brain runs to ensure you survive the psychological pressures of reality.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely lingering thought. If so much of what you think, remember, and feel is actually an automated security firewall designed to deceive you for your own protection, what remains of your true self beneath that firewall? It's a fascinating and, yeah, maybe a slightly terrifying question to consider the very next time you are absolutely certain that you are right. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.